Here we go. Well, thank you, Landon. Wow, I can hear myself well. Thank you, Landon, and certainly to those of you here today, I always appreciate the opportunity to get out and talk to groups. And Chris and I were talking just a few minutes ago about some of the issues that we're facing across our community today in the criminal justice field and public safety. And I do feel compelled to talk about that a little bit because I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant, and I think it's the issue of our time, and certainly always will be. But I want to kind of cast it in a different perspective than maybe many of you have heard. But before I get into that, let me talk just a little bit about county government. I assume when I speak to groups across Shelby County that they understand the role of county government, and oftentimes I find that they don't. There's a misunderstanding, or at least confusion, about the role of county government. Let me start off by saying that there's very little, if any, overlap between the functions of county government and the functions of city government. County government has a very defined role to play. The role of county government is defined by the state legislature. And across Tennessee's 95 counties, 93 of those counties follow the same basic structure. We have 2 counties in Tennessee that are consolidated. Davidson County, which is Nashville, and then Trousdale County, which is a very small county up in East Tennessee, or up in Middle Tennessee. And Trousdale County has 1 city in the entire county. But those are the only 2 counties that vary from the norm across Tennessee. Now, of the other 93 counties, we're basically the same as far as our structure. And our structure is very much on the Federalist model. The way it was established by our founding fathers. We have the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. And then in Tennessee, as defined by the legislature, we have 3 basic domains of service. In other words, there are 3 key areas that county government focuses on. We're often referred to in Tennessee as the wholesale level of government. That means that county government's responsible for those core functions. Now if you have a residence, or have a business in Shelby County, you're paying property taxes. You pay a property tax rate of $4.37. For residential property, it's assessed at 25%. Commercial property is assessed at 40%. And the rate is $4.37. And that $4.37 goes toward the 3 domains of public education, public safety, and public health. Those are the primary areas that we function in. And if you think about it, just about everything that we talk about can have a nexus to one of those 3 domains. And quite often there's a lot of crossing over. Crime is an example. It's considered to be a public safety issue, but crime also is considered to be a public health issue. And if you'll think about it for a moment, it's a very significant public health issue. When you're talking about the victims of crime, those who are victimized, you're talking about a health issue. When you're talking about the long-term support, both emotionally and physically and mentally, for victims of crime, you're talking about public health issues. So there's very clearly a crossover of crime when it relates to the domains. It crosses actually 3 domains. And I'll kind of tie the 3rd domain of education into that as well. So public education, public health, public safety are the 3 main domains of county government. Now, to tie those together a little bit, I attend meetings like you all. I attend meetings of my peers, county leaders across the country. And I was in a meeting recently with one of my colleagues that has a county comparable to ours. And I was asking him, I said, what is it about your county that really sells your county to the public? In other words, you've been fairly successful economically. What are the things that you're doing that really have made you as attractive as you are? In one word, he summed it up. He says it's livability. It's livability. And he's right. If you'll think about it, livability is what really attracts people to our community. When we are recruiting businesses to come into our community, they'll tell you that the two most important things that they look for when they're relocating their staff into a community is, number one, the quality of public education, and number two, safe streets. And if you don't have good public schools, and if you don't have good safe streets, then you are in jeopardy of not getting a fair hearing from those companies that are considering the community. Those are livability issues. But livability also concerns many other things. Livability talks about the quality of health care. Livability talks about the green space that you have. One of the things, Chris, that I love about this particular setting is right on the border of this golf course is the green line. Right. How many of you have gone out on that green line and played on that green line? Ooh, I'm glad to see the hands. God bless you for that. But that beautiful green line there has been one of the great enhancers for our community because it promotes healthy living. It promotes green space. It gives people the venue to get out in the community and to really enjoy the community. And thank goodness as a community we're making progress in that area by expanding our green line. You know, we've got the Shelby County Green Line is out there at Collierville-Arlington Road. That connects up with the Germantown Green Line, which connects up with the Wolf River Green Line, which then connects up with Shelby Farms. Folks, we've got so many different initiatives that are moving toward this issue of green space to get people out of their houses and get them out into the community. We're doing quite well in that area. We still have room to improve and progress to make. But certainly when you talk about livability, you're talking about green space. When you talk about livability, you're talking about the arts. You're talking about community theater. We're a county that's blessed with great community theater. I don't know how many of you are patrons of community theater, but I think just about every municipality in Shelby County has community theater. And it's wonderful. I think I've attended all of them. I love community theater. And I go to these community theaters and they're always packed. People are hungry for that type of entertainment. Our art galleries, the Dixon, the Brooks, beautiful areas. I was out at the Dixon just last weekend. Beautiful weather, the gardens are glowing, and what a beautiful opportunity it is to get out and just enjoy the arts that we have. Our South Main Street district downtown, the great work that takes place down there. Folks, we are endowed with many attributes that can sell our community. Now, I emphasize that because it's very easy for us to get down on our community when you think about the events of this past weekend. And it's tragic. It's tragic. I hurt just like everyone else does when we read the paper about the loss of children to violence in our community. It hurts. But when you dissect the issues of crime, the issues or the solving the problems of crime are much more complicated than many people really understand. Last night I was listening to the police director talk, and he's taking a lot of pressure right now, a lot of heat for the crime problems. Folks, Tony Armstrong is not the problem. He is not the problem. Memphis police is not the problem. As the county mayor, I've often been asked, Mark, when you were the sheriff, public safety was a priority with you then. Why is it now? And I said, because there are so many facets to public safety that are not related to law enforcement that deserve more attention than they're getting. From my many years of working in the criminal justice system, there are three things that I've really observed that create the problems for us in the fields of public safety and criminal justice. If you look at the average person that's matriculating through our criminal justice system, basically what you see is a young person, and in our community predominantly black, but it's a young person who's dropped out of school, has a comprehension level about 5th or 6th grade, comes from a very turbulent background, no faith foundation, all of those social structures that you think about that are so important in raising babies to be responsible adults. When you look at the average person that's in our criminal justice system, you see they're devoid of that type of experience. They didn't grow up in a faith community. They didn't grow up in a community that emphasized education. They didn't grow up in an intact family where parents worked together to raise that child. That's vitally important when you raise babies to be adults. And if you only rely on law enforcement to solve the problem, then you're forgetting the very fundamental and foundational role that each of you have to fight crime. What's the best way you can fight crime? Raise your babies. Raise your babies right. Make sure your babies get an education. Make sure your babies have good health checkups. Make sure your babies grow up to be responsible teenagers. And as responsible teenagers, teaching them what to do to be responsible adults. I had the pleasure this morning, and this is one of the joys of the job. I had the pleasure this morning to go out to Whitehaven High School. Whitehaven High School was honoring 22 seniors that have received each has received more than $1 million in college scholarships. 22 students. Yeah, give them a big hand. 22 students. 22 students at Whitehaven High School that have, each one has accumulated more than $1 million in scholarship money to go to college. And I made the comment to them, I said, number one, congratulations. Number two, be darn thankful of the parents out here and the teachers at this school, the principal of this school, who have helped you achieve this milestone. Because those seniors got there because they had parents that were in their corner, they had friends, they had family, they had a church, they had a faith community that engaged them to the point of making a difference. Education is fundamental to fighting crime. If you don't raise children in an educated environment and you allow them to languish in squalor and a lack of education, the chances of them entering a life of crime are multiplied. Education is vital to fighting the problem of crime. It is vitally important that we have police out on the street. But folks, you cannot afford what it would cost to put the number of police out on the street that would solve the problem alone. And all police are doing is reaping the harvest. They are reaping the harvest. Until we do something beyond reaping the harvest, then we're going to have a difficult time fighting crime in our community. Another aspect of fighting crime is what I call intervention, or breaking the cycle of crime. We have some reentry programs that we're involved with. Daryl Bustleton's been very much involved with some of our reentry programs across Shelby County for years and years, of where we intercede in the lives of people who have what I call right on the cusp of really significant violent criminal behavior. You intercede in their lives, and through a variety of services provided, you turn that person around at a critical time in life. Most successful in that age group, the 20s. Catching those young people who've stepped off into a life of crime, have a desire to change, but have never had the opportunity or anyone who's invested in them to change. How important that is. How important it is that we try to reach out through a variety of programs in our correctional facilities, in our community, through our faith-based community, to reach out and intercede in the lives of these young people to kind of break that cycle of crime. How important it is. How important it is. That is a part of solving crime. You fight crime at 3 different levels. Suppression, which is boots on the ground. You must have law enforcement officers on the ground, well-trained, well-equipped, but you also must have very, very vital, strong prevention programs to try to prevent those young people from ever getting into that life of crime. And then you must have the intervention, which intervenes in the lives of those people who have emotional, physical, intellectual problems that are leading them in a life of crime, addressing those in a constructive way to move that person into a life of tax paying as opposed to tax consuming. Economic development. Economic development. If you grow a community economically, It goes a long way toward improving the health of the community, improving in so many different ways. Last year, our Chamber of Commerce here in Shelby County stated that there were 14,000 jobs that went unfilled in Shelby County because of a lack of qualified employees or applicants. 14,000. The problem that we have in Shelby County is not a lack of jobs, it's a lack of qualified people for the jobs. And then that comes back to our education system. Our education system must not only address the needs of the youth that are coming up, but our education system must be the type of system that has core standards, that hold children responsible, that hold teachers responsible for graduating people from high school who, number one, are academically ready to move either into the world of work or to higher education. And we don't spend a tremendous amount of money and time on remedial training. Too much of our time in colleges is being spent on remedial education. Why? Because our school system is not doing all that it can or all that it should to raise the standards. Now, I'm not advocating for Common Core. All I'm saying is that we have got to do better than what we've done. We know in Shelby County that our number of residents with a college degree is around the 27th percentile. It's below the state average. We know that our unemployment rate is above the state average. We know that the number of homeless is above the state average. In those areas where education could make a difference, where jobs could make a difference, we're not as strong as we need to be. Our challenges are in those three areas and working collectively, the difference that it can make in our community. Now, in education, Shelby County government, your $4.37 property tax, $2.14 of that goes to education. And it goes to all the public schools in Shelby County. Municipal school districts get a portion of that money. The Shelby County School District gets a portion of that money. We have a huge responsibility toward public education in our community. I think we're going to see the face of education change in so many ways. We're seeing it now. You see charter schools, you see achievement schools, you see virtual schools, you see home schools. You see so many different ways of educating students. Certainly we must be supportive of our public education system, but it's also vitally important that we look for options and alternatives. You know, we're in a much different world today than when I grew up. A very traditional education system that I matriculated when I was young. But today, with technology as it is, the world being smaller, being more closely aligned in so many different areas or so many different ways, we've got to continue to look for innovative ways to educate our children. So whether you choose to homeschool, whether you choose to charter school, the important thing is that we have an education system that's meeting the demands of the 21st century workforce. And at this point, we're somewhat lacking. Public health again is one of those issues that if you have high health standards, it improves in so many ways. High health means better attendance at work. It means a healthier workforce. It means less absenteeism in the workforce. Good health programs are vital. If you look across Shelby County, we have a wealth of healthcare providers. Baptist, Methodist, Le Bonheur, St. Francis, Region 1, Church Health Center, West Clinic, UT Center for Health Sciences, and it goes on and on and on. Yet if you look at the indicators of public health in our community, high rate of infant mortality, high rate of obesity, childhood obesity, hypertension, so many key indicators that indicate that our health is not as strong as it should be. Vitally important that we have a healthy, vibrant workforce to offer companies moving into our area. Safety, health, education, excelling in those three areas creates the livable community that we're all striving for. There's a role for you in all of those domains. It's not just the police's responsibility to solve crime, but it's your responsibility to help prevent crime. It's not just the school's responsibility to educate children. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're complementing education. It's not the hospital's responsibility to solve the issues of health, but it's through your household and educating children on proper health standards that creates a healthy workforce. The point is that we're all in this together. We all have a responsibility. We all have a sphere of influence. We all have responsibilities when it comes to creating the livable community that we want to sell. Now, I'm a strong advocate and proponent for what we're doing in Shelby County. I look at the progress that we've made in so many areas, and I think we're doing pretty good. Urban America suffers from the same ills that we suffer from. I have family that lives down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I visit them periodically, and I love when I go into these cities to pick up the local newspaper and read it and watch the 10 o'clock news. I was recently visiting my daughter in Fort Worth, listening to the 10 o'clock news and reading the morning paper. You know, I could have shut my eyes, and when I listened to that 10 o'clock news, I could have said, that's Memphis. When I read the paper the next morning, they were quarreling over the disposition of vacant school buildings. That could be Memphis. Folks, the issues we're facing are not unique to us. But the important thing is that we understand the solution to our problems is unique to us, because we know what we have to do to address those problems, and that's the challenge that we have. So I would hope that events like today, comments like I've made today, certainly the fact that you're here and the interest that you have in our community by being a part of organizations like this would prick your conscience to the point that you would look inwardly at in what ways you can be a player in the resolution of these issues. What we saw this past weekend is tragic in our community. It is tragic. When I see things like that, I wonder about the parents. I wonder about what involvement and what engagement did the parents have? Could the parent have done something to have avoided that situation that their baby was in? I don't know, but I'm sure that's a question that parents are asking. Let's not find ourselves in a situation where after the fact, we look and say, well, I could have done something. I could have done something. Look for what you can do now. Look for how you can get engaged in one of those three domains. Maybe it's through the school, maybe it's through the church, maybe it's through the neighborhood association, but find a role to play. And believe me, we'll help you in that regard. We have in Shelby County government some 300 positions for citizens to get engaged in one of the boards or commissions that we have. They deal with everything from environmental issues to safety issues to crime issues. We'd love to have you involved as a volunteer in any way that you can. Okay, I kind of went off script today, Daryl, so you didn't get to hear the same speech. But I would like to take some time for questions, and one of the things I've learned, Chris, is when you stand up, I sit down. So I will watch for a cue from you.
I'll remember that.
Yeah, but I'll watch for a cue from you as to when I need to terminate on questions. But certainly would love to have any questions or hear any questions you might have, and let it kind of direct the discussion. Yes, ma'am.
Talk a little bit, if you would, about and the incident with the child is tragic, but I'd like for you to talk about what seems to be unique to Memphis. This is the second time the run on the Cleveland location of the gas station and the gentleman that got beat up by all those kids. What can be done about that? Is there any solution to that, or is there anything that we can do? I don't expect the police to handle all this themselves. They can't. I know that. And I realize what you're saying about the babies and that we need to raise them correctly. But what can we do as citizens right now regarding things like that to stop it?
Well, first of all, I don't have inside knowledge as to everything that's gone on with that. There's certainly the issues that the police department addresses on occasions like that. But what can you do specifically about incidents like that? I would go back to your sphere of influence. What is your sphere of influence? Where can you make a difference? You can make a difference in those things that you can touch personally. I think it's good that in every fraternal organization, every social organization, professional organizations, that there be an emphasis of some sort on events like that. I think it's a worthy issue of discussion for you all collectively as an organization, is that what can you all do as an organization? There are some things that you all can do. Obviously, financial resources directed in particular preventive programs. I was, this morning after I left Whitehaven, I was over at the Lippman Center at the University of Memphis at a preschool program. And we are trying to put more and more resources into Head Start and preschool type programs where we can get, we have a critical need for children in getting involved in early childhood education programs. And again, it kind of goes back to the status of our society today. We're a much fast-paced society. When I was growing up, we didn't have kindergarten. I didn't go to kindergarten. I don't think I learned to read and write until I was in the first grade. I've got a 3-year-old grandson now that's already starting to count. Children are so much brighter and are moving so much quicker through those formative periods that if we don't capture that child's imagination at 3 and 4 years old, by the time they're 6, we've already missed about 3 years of formative development. Pre-kindergarten, we were successful last year in getting some $3 million in county funding put into pre-kindergarten program, which gave us leverage to get a $17 million grant to expand pre-kindergarten by about 1,500 students. Now that's just scratching the barrel because, quite frankly, we need slots for about 5,000 critically needy children in that area. But certainly anything we can do to get our babies more engaged in programs like pre-kindergarten, like early Head Start, to get them engaged and constructively focused on those things that will grow them progressively. If you look at some of the children that were arrested in that first Kroger incident back about 3 months ago, these were 11, 12, and 13-year-olds that already had a history of criminal behavior. So we missed those children back at that formative stage. Now, what makes what I've just said so critically and so difficult is how do we catch the attention of parents who don't care? Now, folks, I can tell you I gave you the 3 ways to fight crime: suppression, prevention, intervention. Suppression is the easiest. That's putting cops out on the street, and guns in their hands, curfews in place. That's the easiest part. The toughest part of fighting crime is prevention and intervention. And that involves more than just law enforcement. I'm afraid that not enough people like yourselves recognize the prevention and the intervention strategies that are necessary to fight crime. So the short answer to your question is look for a prevention or an intervention strategy that collectively you can address as a group, or maybe personally where you can get engaged in one of those organizations that are making a difference.
Okay, that's good answer.
Next, yes.
Mayor, as a county resident, I'd like to say I think you and your administration does a fine job. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is not a question with a short answer, but do the best you can here.
Okay.
You talk about county government being a wholesale provider of 3 key points. Can you tell us a little bit about how you coordinate with the city government as well?
Well, first of all, county government has a role to play in 7 municipalities of Shelby County. We certainly don't have the primary responsibility for the city of Memphis, but we do financially support every school in the city of Memphis. So that's one area of collaboration. As I mentioned a while ago, the way that we're designed is we're designed to try to avoid overlap. And we do a pretty good job of that. There are 2 or 3 areas that we, by design, collaborate very closely with the city of Memphis and other municipalities. That's in economic development and public health. Those are 2 areas our public health department covers the city of Memphis as well as the other 6 municipalities. So by design, we coordinate very closely on economic development and public health. Economic development for the reasons I stated. Really, if we are able to attract a factory for Bartlett, that's going to benefit Memphis. And if you're going to put it in Memphis, it's going to affect Arlington in a positive way. So there's a lot of collaboration in those areas. Mayor Wharton and I get together, well, we were together this morning. He and I meet informally probably 2 or 3 times a week. We meet formally about once every 2 weeks, where we sit down and try to sort things out that have a common ground area. But we do by design put a lot of money into all the municipalities as it relates to things like education. Public health is an interesting one because public health covers such a broad range of issues, everything from mosquito control to vaccination. Quick story, back a year or so ago, anybody from Germantown? Germantown, a few from Germantown. We had a situation, you weren't the one that did this, were you? Germantown just cut this new road in that connects Wolf River with Germantown Parkway, right there at the medical center there. And it's a beautiful cut through there and saves a lot of time. But I got a call one morning from a resident out in the Germantown neighborhood, very close to that road being cut, just really rather angry. She said, you know, one of the highlights of my day is going out on my deck with a cup of coffee and watching the sun come up. And I went out this morning, there were 2 rats on my deck. She said, we don't have rats in Germantown. I said, well, you do. But rats, that's a county health problem. You know, we go out there and we have to treat for rats. So we go to Germantown and we go into Memphis and fight rats. We spray for mosquitoes. We provide the vaccinations. We have the health services in our schools. So there's a great deal in those 3 domains of health, education, and safety where we work in all the 7 municipalities routinely. And then in the municipalities, you'll see really they're augmented by the services that they provide there. For example, you go out to Germantown and Bartlett, you're going to find a sheriff's deputy and a Bartlett police officer at Bartlett schools. You'll find a sheriff's deputy and a Germantown police officer in the Germantown schools. So we work very closely with the law enforcement branches to collaborate on safety issues. Our Memphis Police Department and the Sheriff's Office collaborate on Metro Gang Unit to try to track the gang warfare that takes place across the community. So we by design have primary responsibility in those 3 domains that I mentioned, and then we're always looking for ways that we can collaborate and share other services. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of economic development and the need for education, the pilot programs, do they have anything tied within them that mandates that when a company is a recipient of those funds or incentives, that they be involved specifically with the community and how that support is to be seen, like with schools, for instance, or whatever it may be?
There's a matrix that we follow that they can earn points toward their pilot application, which can determine how many years they get on their pilot application. There is a section in there on workforce diversity. If they meet certain goals, then they get X number of amount of credit for that. As far as getting civically engaged in the community, there's nothing there that requires that they get civically engaged. There are some requirements that they have to meet as far as pay is concerned, as far as the quality of the workforce, how quickly they can ramp up. We have a locally owned small business provision there. They will commit to contracting a certain percentage of their work for locally owned small businesses. We don't have in Shelby County the ability to set goals for minority or diversity issues. We can encourage, we can ask them to do that. You have to have a disparity study in place. If you're familiar with disparity studies, disparity studies are studies that determine factually whether or not you have been in an economy that discriminates. And if it's proven through a disparity study that you have an economy that has discriminated, then you can establish goals. And we're in the process now of going through a disparity study to determine if we indeed have proof that there's been discrimination. If that comes back affirmative, then we'll be able to set some goals that address disparity in locally owned small business type work. But as far as civic engagement, no, you will find that most of the large companies will contribute in some way. Obviously, FedEx is the banner company that you see everywhere, but AutoZone very much involved, International Paper. The big ones, it's within their DNA and their culture to be civically engaged, and quite frankly, there are very few large companies in this community that don't get involved in some way, somehow, through sponsorships and things of that nature. We're a pretty charitable community. We've done very well.
Top of that list.
Yeah, we're a very charitable community, and what really humbles me is that when we see our unemployment level where it is, which is not pretty, you see our homelessness level where it is, you see those issues, yet you still see us being very generous and exceeding our previous standards of giving. So we're a charitable community. Other questions? Folks, let me close by, first of all, thanking you for the opportunity to do this. I think elected officials need to do things like this. We need to get out and talk about what we do, listen to you, hear your concerns. I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me to serve 8 years as your sheriff and now in my second term as your county mayor. I enjoy what I'm doing. I say a prayer each night that I will do my best to not disappoint you. I may not always make the decisions that you like, but I do want to promise you that I'll do my best to be honorable in my intentions and in my work. And each day I appreciate and pray for the opportunity that you've given me. Thank you so much.